Assalamu alaikum. Hello everyone. So today we will continue with our third lesson on the same topic, which is cells. And we are still on unit 1.1, which covers, of course, cell structure and function. So we will be focusing today and going into the details of learning outcome number 4, which you can see on my screen, which deals with identification of diagrams, identification on diagrams, photomicrographs or electron micrographs, the ribosomes, the mitochondria, chloroplasts, nucleus, sap vacuole, cytoplasm, cell membrane, and cellulose cell wall in a plant cell. So this means that again, the same three kind of diagrams, either our own handmade diagrams or light micrographs, which is a picture taken from how a plant cell looks on a light microscope, and a picture taken from how a plant cell looks on an electron microscope, to identify all these different organelles, which are tiny structural and functional compartments within a plant cell, to identify them and also to know some details about them. So let's start. Right in front of you, you can see two diagrams. One on the right-hand side, which is a light micrograph, which you can see. I'll just zoom into it. It's written, it has been taken from plant cells, which can show you some green structures. And these green structures which are visible are known as chloroplasts. And this slide is actually an electron. It's a picture from a plant cell that has been magnified around 2000 times, right? And then on the left-hand side, you can see a figure that is a handmade drawing of a same kind of a plant cell. So let's say I'm just using my highlighter to show you the boundary or the outline of this plant cell. So it's a typical cell that has been taken from a plant. And actually it has been taken from a plant leaf. Such kind of a cell in which we find an abundance of these green colored structures is known as a mesophyll cell. And to be very precise, it is known as a palisade mesophyll cell. Palisade mesophyll cells are typical plant cells which are found in the leaf. Since the leaf is the green colored structure of a plant, so this green color of a leaf has been actually been given by these structures which are known as chloroplasts. They are full of the green coloring matter, which is chlorophyll. It is actually this chlorophyll which has got the capability of trapping sunlight and making food or glucose for the plant. Or in other words, it is this chlorophyll which can trap sunlight and carry out photosynthesis. Excuse me. And this is one cell. This is another cell. Okay. In this light micrograph, which is on the right-hand side, you can see this structure, which is very obvious, and this is the cell wall. In a plant, the cell wall is made up of a substance or a molecule, which is known as cellulose. So in other words, we can say that the composition of the plant cell wall is cellulose. Just to remind you, the plant cell wall is a dead structure. It does not have any life, and its composition is cellulose. Cellulose gives this cell wall a tough, rigid structure so that the plant cell is protected from all sorts of external injury. The cellulose cell wall is a completely permeable cell wall, as opposed to the cell membrane, which is partially permeable. So this means the cellulose cell wall allows all sorts of substances to pass through, but as soon as they pass or get inside, they will come across the cell membrane, which will not allow every substance to get into it, right? So let me show you the cell wall and the cell membrane on the diagram on the left-hand side. Let me zoom into it to show you the cell wall and the cell membrane. So this is your cell wall. You can label this also as cell wall or this also as cell wall, right? Usually in the actual or the real diagrams like this, it's very difficult to determine what is like, it's very difficult to identify the cell membrane. Basically, this entire part that you can see is nothing but the cell wall. Now, the cell membrane is so thin and delicate, and it is so tightly attached to this inner part of the cell wall that it cannot be easily distinguishable separately. But when we draw a diagram, we always label the cell membrane like this. Just follow my arrow. This part is the cell membrane, and this part, you can label this part also as the cell wall, and this part also as the cell wall. So if you get such kind of diagrams for labeling in your exams, always label the cell membrane like this. Or if you want, I can use this is your cell membrane, this is your cell wall, and this can also be taken as the cell wall. So again, a tough, rigid structure that protects the plant from external injury, that gives shape to all the plant cells, right? And it allows all sorts of substances to pass through. And another very important feature of this cell wall is cellulose cell wall is that since it's a rigid or tough structure, so if the water keeps entering a plant cell, it will not burst because the cell wall will be enough to protect the plant from bursting, as opposed to an animal cell which does not have a cell wall. It only has a cell membrane. So if lots of water keeps entering an animal cell, a time will come when the cell membrane will no longer be able to withstand this pressure and it will burst. But a plant cell will never burst, and the reason is because it has a cell wall. Showing you the nucleus of the plant cell, right? As I told you before, the nucleus of a plant cell is pushed to a little bit in the corner of the plant cell, as opposed to the nucleus of an animal cell, which lies more or less in the center. So you can see that the nucleus is lying to one corner. Again, reminding you, the nucleus is an organelle which controls all the activities of a cell. And when I say all the activities, what I mean is that it controls cell division, cell growth, and repair of worn out parts, right? So everything is under control of the nucleus. The nucleus also contains DNA or chromosomes, the genetic material of every plant or animal cell. Another part of the plant cell or another organelle found inside the plant cell is the vacuole. And over here in this diagram, you can see two big vacuoles. A plant cell may have one vacuole, or it may have more than one vacuole. So this, let's consider this vacuole. This entire thing is the vacuole. The membrane that surrounds the vacuole is known as the tonoplast. Let me give you the name. As it is written over here, membrane around the vacuole. So you can call it the membrane around the vacuole, or you can also call it the tonoplast, right? What is the function of the vacuole? As you can see over here, vacuoles in plants are always large and they store a liquidy substance which is known as the cell sap. Let's see what this cell sap is. The cell sap is made up of water, okay? And it is made up of glucose, amino acids, and mineral salts. The cell sap can also store many important substances for the plant. Sometimes it can store certain pigments or other food substances, right? So cell sap is the liquidy substance, which is a combination of water and glucose and many other substances. It can sometimes store pigments. It is found within the vacuole, and the membrane that surrounds the vacuole is known as the sap vacuole membrane, or it is known as the tonoplast. Just like this membrane, just like this cell membrane, the tonoplast is also partially permeable, which means it will allow certain substances to pass through and it will not allow certain substances to pass. So it's partially permeable. It's just acting like a gatekeeper, not completely permeable like cell wall. Okay, so up till now, we have covered which structures of a plant cell. Number one, cell wall. We did its chemical composition, which is cellulose. We did its function. Then we moved on to nucleus, which is more or less the same as in an animal cell. Only the position of the nucleus in the plant cell is different, that it is pushed to a little bit at the corner of a cell or the edge or the periphery of the cell. Then we move on to the vacuole, which is filled with cell sap, and the membrane that surrounds the vacuole is known as the tonoplast. Another part of the plant cell is the chloroplast, which you can see over here in the diagram. The chloroplast is an oval-shaped organelle. This is also a chloroplast. This one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. So oval-shaped or sausage-shaped organelles found only in the plant cells. They are a distinctive feature of plant cells. Animal cells or humans don't have chloroplasts because we don't have chlorophyll. These structures are filled with this green colored pigment, which is known as chlorophyll. Why? Because chlorophyll has got the ability to trap sunlight and make food for the plant, which is photosynthesis. So this means that a plant cannot photosynthesize in the absence of chloroplast, because chloroplasts contain that pigment which is a must for the plant to photosynthesize, right? So this is another very important distinctive organelle which is found in a plant cell. Now, just like animal cells, the plant cells also have ribosomes and mitochondria. When I was doing animal cells with you, I had shown you mitochondria and also ribosomes. And I had told you that mitochondria are the organelles in which energy is made, or they are the powerhouse of the cell. And ribosomes are those tiny organelles in which proteins are synthesized. And I had already told you that ribosomes are so tiny that they cannot be even seen with a good quality light microscope. They can only be seen with an electron microscope, whereas mitochondria can be seen with a good quality light microscope. Remember this diagram in which I had shown you these red colored organelles, which are the mitochondria, but the ribosomes were not visible over here. So just as animal cells contain ribosomes and mitochondria, the plant cells also contain the same organelles: ribosomes for protein synthesis in the plant and mitochondria to generate energy in the plant. Let me show you a high power magnification of a plant cell. This is a diagram taken from a plant cell that has been magnified on a very high power magnification, in which you can see the cell wall. Let me highlight the cell wall for you. This is the cell wall, the one I'm coloring. And then I'll show you the cell surface membrane. See, it's written cell surface membrane pressed against the cell wall. It's very tightly pressed, so it cannot be easily seen separately, right? But when we label like this. This is the cell membrane. Then you can see this huge, this entire thing. This is the vacuole. As you can see, the membrane of the vacuole has been labeled as tonoplast, and the contents of the vacuole have been labeled as cell sap. We can see lots of these chloroplasts, which are full of chlorophyll. We can also see mitochondrion, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we can see these tiny dotted structures, these ones. Just follow my cursor. These dotted structures which are lying freely in the cytoplasm, they are ribosomes. Sometimes these dotted structures are found on these tubes, so they can be free or they can be attached on these tubes. Whether they are free or whether they are attached, they still are known as ribosomes, and their function is the same, which is to synthesize protein. Another very important part of a plant cell, which we discussed in the animal cell also, is the cytoplasm. So the space between the cell membrane, all the space between the cell membrane and between the tonoplast, between the cell membrane and between the nucleus, all this space which you can see, this brownish area, everything is the cytoplasm. So the cytoplasm is this free space in the plant cell. It is a place where majority of chemical reactions take place. As I told you, that you can consider cytoplasm as a chemical laboratory, because in a laboratory also we carry out chemical reactions. So cytoplasm is an essential place where all these different organelles are floating around, and where different chemical reactions can take place. Another diagram which you can see, it's a handmade drawing. It's a drawing of the onion epidermis cells as they can be seen through a light microscope when we have stained them with iodine. So again, you can see the same structures. You can see the cell wall, you can see the cytoplasm, you can see the nucleus which has been pushed to a side, and you can see that huge vacuole that contains the cell sap and which is bounded by the tonoplast. So this is your huge vacuole, this entire thing. This is your nucleus. This is your cell wall, and cell membrane is very tightly sort of adhered or stuck to the inner part of the cell wall. Let's go back and see whether we have covered this learning outcome. So yes, today we have covered the learning outcome number 4, where we were able to identify on the diagrams, on the photomicrographs and on the electron micrographs, the ribosomes, the mitochondria, the chloroplasts, the nucleus, the sap vacuole, the cytoplasm, the cell membrane, and the cellulose cell wall in a plant cell. So I think it's enough for today. See you next time.